right, here we go. Very good. Nice to see you all. Ed, how are you?
Good, John, and you?
I'm good.
All righty.
Sam, it looks like you made it home safely.
Yeah, yeah. Back in training mode for a minute.
Very good. How's Mississippi?
It's, we're making it. We're surviving so far.
Very good. Oh, glad to hear that. Excellent. Excellent. All right. Okay, well, I think this is going to get us started. Thank you all for coming today. Emily is going to be our presenter. We are back to talking about HR again here, and I'm excited to see what she's got going for us. So, a couple of quick announcements. This is our first Thursday of the month webinar. Don't forget, we have another one on the third Thursday, which is about financial fundamentals. So, Michaela usually does that one. Please plan to attend that. Don't miss the FYI Market Pulse that's on Monday mornings and the FYI Finance Q&A that is on Wednesday afternoons at 2 Mountain, 3 Central. What else do we have going on, Kylan? We got a couple of things. I think we have for Ranch Right, we did our 100th episode of Ranchonomics. We have a giveaway for that, right? Isn't there somewhere they're supposed to go sign up for that if they want to participate?
Yep, in the podcast notes or on all of our social media.
Awesome.
You can find that.
Very good. This will be recorded and put up on our YouTube channel. So please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you don't already, subscribe to the podcast. We've been having a bunch of fun there. And it's hard to believe that we're already 100 episodes in. So a couple more and we'll be at 2 full years. Anyway, with that, Emily, let's get started.
All right, we ready to roll?
Yep.
So welcome back. Putting this together, I can't believe it's the sixth in the series. It feels like we just started last year, so I'm really excited. This is probably the most complex topic that we're going to cover from an HR perspective. There's a lot here, and I will say we'll scratch the surface on some stuff, and we can deep dive later if we want. But there's a lot to cover, so we'll get into it with hopefully not putting you to sleep today. So one of the topics that I hear all the time that people avoid way too long is obviously pay. I think it's not because we don't care as business owners or ranch managers. It's because it's personal. A lot of times we're working with family. It's awkward. It could be risky. You could lose people over the conversation. But I feel like today we're going to give you guys some tools, and I've got a lot of scripts that we'll give you and that we can share afterward that I hope will really help you, prepare you, that you can go home and practice in the mirror to when the conversation comes up, you'll feel like you are equipped and ready to answer the question with your employees. So let's dive in. All right, so today is the capstone. And because you guys can do all of this right. One of the things, especially when I worked at Eaton, one of the things, my mantra was, you can do everything right, you can mess pay up, and you failed, right? So we have to get pay right, and we have to do it right the first time, because we'll lose a lot of credibility, and we'll lose a lot of good people if we're inconsistent, unclear, or we don't ever talk about it. Nobody likes to talk about money, but let's normalize it. All right, so here's some of the broader topics that we're going to cover today. This is our roadmap. So I like this theme of why things feel so hard. So we'll get into that. What is market pay? A lot of times when I hear market, Zach is over here talking about the cattle market. When I hear market, I think of market rates. So we'll talk about what that actually is. Total compensation. Sam, I think you and I were talking about this yesterday or day before yesterday. So we'll talk about the real number. We'll look at some pay structures, pay for performance, talk about internal equity a little bit and what that means. And then I'll give you guys some scripts. And of course, we're going to end with our call to action. All right. So as we all know, why this feels hard. It's personal, especially when you know the person. Maybe it's your neighbor's kid. It's your brother, your brother-in-law. I think a lot of us have a fear of setting a precedent that you can't sustain, which is absolutely not true. We can always change things. It may be awkward, uncomfortable, but don't fear setting a precedent. You don't actually know what market looks like for ag workers. And there is not a lot of good data out there. And so we'll get into where that data is and lives and where you can use it. I think pay conversations can feel like audits of your worth as a boss. And it certainly is not tied to your worth. This second to last one here is huge. In ag, loyalty and longevity really, really muddy the waters, especially when somebody's been with you a long time. And most of us, let's be honest, we're just guessing, right? We're going off of our gut. All right, so Daniel Pink has a couple of really good books, but one of them is called Drive. And this is when John and I were talking about this topic, the number one thing that simplified the whole topic was pay people enough. So Daniel Pink says here, if you haven't read this book, it's a great book. It basically talks about this core idea here, pay people enough to take the issue off the table. Instead, people are motivated by a lot of the things we've already talked about in the first 5 webinars, which is autonomy, mastery, and purpose, and feeling like their work matters. So obviously compensation matters and getting it right matters, but after a certain point, the clarity and purpose and growth are really, and culture are just as important. All right, so what is market pay? So market pay is not one specific website or your neighbor or just one opinion or maybe what your dad paid. Market is a collection of data points. So certainly down here, our pro tip, we want multiple sources. So talk to 2 or 3 respected operators in your area and compare that with what we're going to see in some of these benchmarks. So what I want to tell you is certainly Glassdoor, Indeed, LinkedIn, cool, great. Even ChatGPT is like the new Google. And a lot of people will go out there and look at that for wage rates. Those are okay, but they are very skewed. And they're not going to give you really good rural data. Don't go off just your one neighbor. Ask an assortment of neighbors and people that you really respect and know run good, solid operations. And then lastly, don't rely on what you've always paid. Inflation has moved on without you. And what we thought 5-10 years ago was really good, healthy pay rates, it's not the same today. I even think about when I got into HR many, many years ago, I remember back the first salary I made and how exciting it was. And I look back now and I'm like, whoa, we have come a long way from where we were even 15, 20 years ago. So don't rely on these things. Some better sources are the number one place I would ask you to go look. It doesn't matter if you're not relying on H-2A workers. Go out and benchmark that federal data. H-2A wages are going to be a little bit on the lower end of, I think, what you want to pay, but that's a really good starting point to where you can put your floor. The second place is our National Ag Statistics Service. If you go out there to the USDA, they've got some great data that you can dig into and research. And if you're a data nerd, you're going to geek out on this one. Colorado State in 2025, they issued a really cool report and did some wage surveys with their extension office. And so if you go out there and you go to their website, they've got all kind of cool data. Now, knowing that we don't live in Colorado, take that in mind. Every state is different, but the CSU extension website has some really cool data that can be very, very relevant. Your State Farm Bureau, that's going to vary from state to state, but if your state does a good job, that's going to be a solid source. And then lastly, I would say of all of them, your State Department labor wage classifications vary by state, but again, that's going to be probably the least. I still would rely on the Department of Labor over these Glassdoor, Indeed type wages. Any questions so far? John, anything to add?
No, I think you're great here.
Good.
I agree with you there. I will just say there's a ton of information out on the interwebs about all these things, and you really need to make sure you're discerning and looking at things you trust.
100%. All right. So switching gears a little bit, now that we know where to go get the data from that we can trust, what is our total compensation? What is our real number? And this isn't like some made up fluffy thing. These are real numbers. So when we talk about pay, I don't ever want you guys to just think about the hourly rate. Your employees receive real value that they and you may not actually be counting. If you provide housing, utilities, meals, if you provide a whole beef as part of their benefit package, that one is going to get you. If you allow them to use vehicle or gas, and then for those of you guys who have any kind of big equipment or landscaping businesses, and you allow your employees to have access to that, that's another big one. So again, most employees think about their hourly rate. But we really need to put together the non-cash benefits alone. One of the ones that I didn't have up here, but is a huge one and that you can put a real dollar to is hunting rights. So if you live anywhere in, the middle of the US and you've got thousands of acres and you allow your employees to hunt, having those hunting rights and giving that to them as a benefit is huge. So that's part of their compensation package. So if we look at this and say, have you ever actually had the discussion of what your total compensation package is? Almost no one does. And so we've got a breakdown here. So in general, across the US, I use $18 an hour for a real number, or for a round number. That's generally for ranch labor, kind of what our average hourly rate, Roger Rabbit. $18 an hour is what our average hourly wage is across the US in general. And so if we take that $18 an hour and multiply it by our magic number, which is 2,080 hours, which is 40 hours a week, we obviously know we work a lot of overtime in ag. So let's just use this for round numbers. We're not going to make a $10,000 mistake here. The base wage for that $18 an hour without overtime is just under $38K a year. However, if you're taking into consideration your housing, your utilities, your vehicle use, if you give them a whole beef, they're actually making the real value of their job is almost $60,000 a year. I mean, you're talking about almost a $20,000 increase that you're not talking about. That if they leave you and go work for somewhere else or work a normal non-ranch job, they're losing $18,000 in benefits that they wouldn't have. Now, we're not going to talk about health insurance or anything like that today. These are the benefits that you offer on your ranch, on your farms. And some of them, like I said, hunting rights are not even up here. So some of you guys have more unique benefits that we could calculate. So it's really more like that $18 an hour job with these extra benefits is more like a $27.50 an hour cent job. Which, could you ever imagine John paying a ranch hand $27.50 an hour?
Yeah, seems perfectly reasonable.
So it's a number worth communicating, and you need to make sure that your employees have the full picture of what their total compensation package is. Sam, that's interesting. You had some H-2A guys trying to push back on the new wages that the U.S. set.
Yeah, I was just going to comment on that. It sort of made me question. In particular, it was the guys who were around for the previous year when it was, much higher, and there still seems to be plenty of people wanting to come over, but particularly from South Africa, they were shopping for sure. So I don't know what that says, but curious if anybody else has experienced that.
I think over and over again, when we analyze H-2A wages, they're not that great of a deal. Like there are situations where they definitely work, but overall it's not as cheap as it once may have been.
Yeah. And again, I think not the H-2A workers, but when we look at our domestic employees, I think we should be using that H-2A rate as kind of the floor. And when I mean floor, we'll get into that a little bit more here in a second, but that's interesting.
Yep. All right, Derek Jackson's got a quick question in here. Emily, should wages be developed by comparing to other sources, or as business owners, I assume this means, should we be looking at the value of the business creates, the role of the employee in creating that value to determine how they should be compensated?
It's almost like he and I are friends. He's segueing me into the next slide here.
I love it. Hang on, Derek. We'll get there.
Yeah. Okay, so the real purpose of compensation. I know everybody's heard the book Good to Great, and you don't normally think of it as a compensation book. But Jim Collins talks about the purpose of compensation is not to motivate the right behaviors, it's to get the right people on the bus and the wrong people off the bus. So I'm gonna kind of walk through this here. So most of us think that we need, you talk to your husband, wife, or you talk to your ranch manager and you go, hey, we need a better compensation or a better incentive plan. So people are going to work harder. They're not working hard enough. How do we get them to work harder? So the mindset is if we pay better, we pay more, we get more effort, we get better results, right? That's our mindset. But actually, his research found here that the best organizations already had people who were self-motivated, values aligned, Derek, kind of what you were talking about, and committed to our mission. And so compensation wasn't actually creating the motivation. It was actually just helping attract, retain, and discourage the wrong people. So what does that mean for us? We have employee A who takes ownership, notices problems, wants responsibility. Then we have employee B. We all had employee B or seen employee B. They do the bare minimum and they need constant reminders to get their standard work done. The best bonus plan in the world is never going to turn employee B into employee A. It just won't. So that's something we need to keep in mind. Compensation is a filter and not an engine. Hiring right first and then structuring pay to keep the right people is the most important thing here. And Derek, I think that gets into the culture and the value of your business. If you have the right culture, the value of your business is going to be part of, you can't put a dollar on it, but it will be part of that total compensation package in a place that you attract and retain really good employees. Any thoughts there, John?
No, I think that's good. Too often people, I think, overpay with the intention of fixing other problems. And I think we're better off to address those problems where they're happening, not to try to compensate in wages.
Agreed. All right, so we'll get into a little bit of pay structures that work in our world. So hourly, obviously, is the most common. It comes with overtime. It's best for variable workload, seasonal, part-time, and roles where hours worked matters. And it's required for most non-exempt employees. Sam, we've had a ton of conversations about non-exempt, exempt, salaried, non-salaried. This is really where the majority of your employees are going to fall, is in this hourly workforce. They're overtime eligible, things like that. The next pay structure is salary. So it's best for leadership, management, highly autonomous roles. You need to have really good job descriptions or position agreements in place. The salary alone does not make someone exempt from overtime requirements or what we call the white collar test. So just keep that in mind. Piece rate. John and I were just talking about this before the webinar. I don't personally have a lot of experience. Some people do. There are places out there that offer piece rate. And it's certainly an option out there if this is something that makes sense to your business. And then performance bonus, tied to specific measurable outcomes, and avoid a good job bonus. So we're going to get into this just a little bit here.
And just let's go back on the piece rate thing. So some of us may talk about that as like a project-based pay. And I think when we were talking about it before, I wasn't thinking of that. So project-based stuff I've done where it's just like, just get the X done and here's how much it's worth, right? So you probably pay some kid to mow your lawn and you might pay him $30 and you don't care how long it takes or what his troubles are along the way. It's like just when the lawn is mowed, I will put $30 in your pocket.
Mm-hmm. Correct. All right. Here are some examples. And this is not the end all be all, but these are some example titles and what a likely good fit would be. So your seasonal crew, somebody who's not going to be there full time, this is part time, they come for harvest, they leave, that's it. Your likely best fit with them is make it clean and simple. You're just paying the hourly rate. That's it. Our ranch hand, a likely best fit is the hourly rate plus some sort of bonus. And here in a minute, we'll talk about the different types of bonuses that you can offer in a creative way. Your herd manager is likely going to be salaried with some sort of incentive tied. And then your general manager, if you have some sort of operations manager, somebody that are really high level, that's where you're going to want your performance incentive and plus your salary. All right. So unknown author here, but people don't leave jobs because they're underpaid. They leave because they feel undervalued, and they're not always the same thing. I think the key here is that fair pay and clear communication about it are the most important things here. All right. So everyone's favorite topic, it's time to hire. What do you need to pay? This is probably top 5 questions that I get from clients. So how do you determine what you need to pay your new hire? The first and foremost step is you need to clearly define the role. What are the tasks, the hours, the physical demand, the things that make up the job description or position agreement? Is it full-time, part-time, seasonal, exempt, non-exempt? Is it a supervisory or leadership role, or is it just an individual contributor role? Step 2, you need to do the things that we talked about earlier. Research the pay range. Pull the data, check your local state, and ask a couple of operators. So before we've even posted the job, we knew we needed somebody. We've done step 1 and step 2. Step 3, this is the one that I would say trips people up the most. Posting a range instead of a number feels very vulnerable, but it actually attracts better candidates and gives you room to reward experience. A lot of people will put on their postings compensation commiserate of experience, right? You like to put that. And if you're not in a state that has pay transparency laws, I would really encourage you to kind of go do some research on pay transparency. I'm not saying that you need to put the pay on your job postings, but I really would highly encourage you to consider it. It really will eliminate the wrong people without even having a conversation, and it will automatically attract the people that go, yep, I can probably live in that world. One of the questions I get about that is there's a fear out there that people are going to see this range and automatically think or ask for the top of the range. This is a very important thing to do when you're in the interview process. Compensation is part of the interview process. It's crucial. Don't wait till you know who you want to hire to start talking about compensation. That's why, to me, it's important to post a range, talk about it in the interview process so that when we get to the offer, it's already very clear where we are and where they stand. So make sure, don't have a fear that everybody's going to expect the top of the range. Humans in general are going to try to get the most that they can. That's just how we are. So don't have a fear of that. Don't let that be a paradigm that you're not going to post the range because you have fear of what people are going to want. Always build in room for negotiation based on experience. If you will really go up to $25 an hour, this is probably a great posting because it leaves you as the owner and manager a little wiggle room. You always want to leave yourself wiggle room. And then also know what you've budgeted and built into your overheads for the year and know what you're going to walk away at. If I say my top dollar is $25 an hour and this is what we can afford and this is what our business can budget for, we can't do a cent over that. You need to be very clear that that's where we're going to stop. So just know, what is your walkaway rate before we start interviewing? And then step 4, this is your secret weapon as business owners and managers. Candidates who understand their total compensation, and back to Derek's point, People who understand the value that they're getting of being in a badass business, sorry, John, they will understand and have
Beep.
more, they will have more understanding and realistic expectations day one. So if you can, once we're making that offer, build a total compensation package. State what they're housing, their meals, if you're giving a whole beef or a half of a beef, if they have hunting rights, if you're letting them use gas or diesel. State all of that clearly up front. And we've got a super easy template that I've even used on our own businesses where it's got their hourly or their salary rate, all of the compensation and the value it brings. And then you can see that total compensation package at the bottom of it and put it in writing. Like, it doesn't matter if you're a husband-wife operation and you're hiring your first ranch hand, put it in writing. It saves a lot of questions later, and it keeps you from having any misunderstanding because it's there in paper. They can take it, they can get it in an email. They know exactly what they're getting. John, did I see a question come through?
I don't know.
Let's see.
Oh, yeah. Clint, can you elaborate on the rationale for hourly on an average ranch hand position? Is that based on the average number of hours worked? For example, we have a husband and wife team working. He is salary, she is hourly. She started as part-time, but 99% of the time is submitting time for 40 hours because she is working that much. We have talked about transitioning her to salary to eliminate the step of submitting hours. Any considerations for doing or not doing this?
Yes.
Good.
Go ahead.
I have thoughts on this too, so go ahead.
Big red warning flags all over this, like waving in the sky.
Okay.
There are very much legal implications and tax implications with employee classification. Yes, I hear you. I know it's easier and it may make your life less stressful. I would caution you here. We've put together like a 4 or 5 step deal of evaluating salary or not, and please caution you here. So John, go ahead.
Well, when we do the husband and wife deal and the wife is hourly, I just want to always be very careful that, the husband isn't, there are a couple of things here that are problematic. The management of it is one. If she really is working 40 hours a week, that's fine. And if you really need a second employee, that's fine. But I've seen too many places where there's a lot of creep here. So we start with the wife working 5 to 10 hours a week, or maybe, during just preg check and branding and weaning and that sort of thing. And then it sort of comes to where she's doing more and more of the husband's job on an hourly rate. And now you're just kind of doubling up on paying stuff. So not saying that always happens, but it does happen. So I would actually deal with them as a, kind of as a separate entity, make sure they are doing separate jobs, making sure her, the projects or the things she is doing are clearly delineated and most preferably separate from the husband. If they're in a camp type situation, sometimes that's really hard to do, right? Because they're kind of working on the same thing. But in a lot of cases, that we want to be very careful with that.
Yep.
Does that make sense, Clint? I don't know if you can talk.
It's actually Corinne out here asking the question. That does make sense. So can you elaborate on the tax implications and structuring from the accountant's perspective on that one then, Emily?
John, you may be better off to answer that one.
Well, so what were you thinking of as far as tax concerns, Emily? You were thinking of the multi-status part of this, or okay, yeah. So just like having somebody that's a contractor part of the year and a W-2 part of the year, if there's salary some of the year, an hourly some of the year, that's a problem. The other thing, and I think you alluded to this earlier, Emily, we want to make sure when we have somebody's salary that we've kind of documented their reason for that, right? It is very standard to do things that way. And at the same time, you can kind of get in some trouble for that because even though a lot of people do it, it's not necessarily correct if we haven't documented it, right?
What do you mean by documenting that the reason for them being salary?
Yeah, Emily, I'm going to turn this to you because you're the one that knows the specifics on this part.
Yeah, so there's so you can have somebody who is salaried but non-exempt. So meaning they're getting the same wage every single week. It's predictable, but they're still eligible for overtime when and if they work it. What the wage and labor has said is we have to have really clear job descriptions and position agreements that state exactly why you're classifying them the way you are. If you go out there to wage and labor, they have a white collar test, and they kind of go and describe what is the difference between salaried and non-salaried hourly. And so I would highly encourage you, Corinne, to go out there and look at that white collar test and see really if the documentation piece is going to be job descriptions and position agreements. And so once you have a good position agreement job description, you can then go take that and look at the white collar test and compare it to what wage and labor says should be a true salaried worker.
Okay.
And where you guys are in Montana, I would be particularly careful about this just because Montana is a bit of a sticky state when it comes to labor.
Okay. And Emily, you helped us build job descriptions and position agreements. So
I was gonna say, I remember, I feel like we did this, so we should be good.
Yeah. Okay.
And then there's a minimum pay component to it as well. So that's part of that test. You have to, almost everybody meets that minimum pay, but there is a minimum pay component to it to be able to meet that threshold.
For salary, you mean?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Is it fair to say, Emily, that a person that has reasonable direction over how work is done and how their time is spent, and even directs the time of other people, that person we're kind of headed in the right direction there?
I would say in general, yes.
Okay.
You still have to be very careful, and the job description has to be very clear, but I would say in general, yes.
Okay. All right.
If you're directing the work of others, and interpreting ranch policy, things like that, again, go back to that white collar test. But yeah, that directing the work of others will generally get you there.
Okay.
All
Good
right.
question, guys.
Thanks, Corinne.
Yeah.
All right, let me ask you this. Is this gal, since you're on and can talk, is this, I mean, is this gal an extra employee, or do we have a spot for another 40 hours there?
Yeah, she was structured into our I mean, when we were working with you guys, she was structured into our stuff, and because of the farming that we do,
Yeah.
we were well within our threshold for where we needed her as a component. So yeah, we were
Awesome.
we were
Okay.
looking on the up and up for that part. Yes.
Very good. Okay.
Yep.
Emily, is it safe to say that if we made that transition at the first of the year, if it was justified, that would be the best way to do that?
That's the cleanest.
Yeah. And then we don't have the 2 tax year reporting problem.
Okay. So outside of the creep and the change in structuring things with our accountant, like she's been here working, we haven't,
Mike.
I mean, there has been creep because we initially hired
that?
her
Just
as
look that guy.
part-time. But then, I mean, there's plenty for her to do, and she stays busy and she works hard, and she's not taking over her husband's job, and et cetera, et cetera. So
Perfect.
all of that I don't think is a big concern with our scenario. So if that's the case, could we, and we do want to make her salary, do you see any additional red flags lurking? Outside of looking up the white collar?
I don't. Emily, do you? I mean, again, I'd do the transition as of January 1st just to
Sure.
make it so the reporting is consistent. But
Easier.
if she really fits the standard and she does good work and you want her as an employee, then I think that's great.
Okay. Sounds good.
You got a 2 for 1 on a housing deal.
Right.
Fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Thanks.
Yep.
All right. So what are we talked about this earlier. So some creative compensation ideas for some of our operations. These are, again, some of the things we talked about, some of the ones we haven't. I know a lot of our operations that we work with do the flexible time off. I love this one. Again, you can't really put a dollar value to it. You can, if you have like 3-ish weeks. So you know if they're going to get 3 weeks paid off a year, things like that. But really, we know during harvest, it's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Not really, but kind of close to that. And so then when we're not in harvest, if you're a lot more flexible, this is a benefit and a really creative way to create value in your employees' minds. A year-end retention bonus. So if you say stay through calving or harvest or whatever maybe it is year-end, it can reduce your seasonal turnover and can really encourage them to get to the end of whatever you need them to get to. And say, hey, I need you to do a really good job at the end of the season. If you stick it out, do a great job, you're going to get $500 or something like that. And then this last one here, I really want to flag it because I think a lot of people forget about it. Offering continuing ed is a huge benefit to our workforce, and it's something that you can easily plug in there. For example, our employee at the ranch here, we're going to send him to the young RFP school. And so it's just doing something like that creates a lot of value for your employees to contribute to their education and things that are really important to them. So these are just some creative ways to add value to your compensation package. All right.
I just had a quick question on the compensation package.
Yeah.
If you let's say you pay for them to go get for 3 months to learn how to weld, and they come back to the farm, but then they have this welding skill, and then they just leave and get a job somewhere else with that skill that you paid for. So can you add that on, being we'll pay for it, but you have to stay with us for 1 year or something?
Yeah. A lot of businesses, especially in the corporate world, a lot of businesses will say, you have to work for me for a year, or you have to work for me for 6 months before you can do this. But once you put in the time, I know you, you know me, we've developed that relationship and trust, then we'll pay for you to go get this. The second thing you can certainly do, it's not always legally binding, but it certainly helps, is you can actually tie that to a contract where you say, if I pay for this welding school, I need you to stick it out for 3 years, or whatever you feel like your return on your investment is, and make them sign something that says, I promise to stay for 3 years if you pay for my school. Now, again, is that legally binding? Probably not. Are the employees, are they going to know that it's not legally binding? If they watch this webinar, maybe, you know what I mean? But having that in writing, kind of psychologically will make them take it more seriously. I can't remember. I had a conversation with somebody on Monday, not exactly the same conversation that we're having here. I'm trying to, might have been James, Danny, that I talked to Monday. We talk about having that fear of developing somebody and then they go start their own business or they take our business. We never, ever want to have that mindset. And I know it's scary and it can be a paradigm, but if you've had that employee and you set a precedent and you say, hey, 1 year, give me 1 year and then we'll have that trust built, the more you can invest in your employees, the more value it's going to create for them, and the more value it's going to create for your business in the community. And yes, it will not be fun long term if they go and do and leave you, but we should all want our employees transparently to fulfill their goals. We should have relationships with our employees, have constant communication to know, all right, you're 22. You may not want to work here for the next 30 years. That's okay. What do you want to do? And how can I help you achieve your life goals so that it's mutually beneficial for us? You talk about somebody who's going to work their ass off for you. When they know that you're going to invest in them and that you care about their life dreams and their vision and where they're going, they're really going to work their butts off. So it can be scary, but put something in paper. Don't let them do it until they've been there a year.
Okay. And I like Mike's comment here, which is effectively pay them back over time. So either add it to their pay and spread it out over 12 months, or say, you stay 6 months and I will pay this back, that sort of thing.
Because our worker's been with us for 3 years and he's just getting bored. He's like a
Yeah.
21-year-old. But you can tell he wants to farm, but I feel like if he adds more value to us, we'd be willing to get him like to learn how to weld. And maybe that would
Yep.
be his new passion and he'd stay. Okay.
Yep.
The,
Please, though, the opposite of this is a problem, right? Heaven forbid you don't train them or help them improve and they do stay, right?
Mm-hmm.
People leaving is not always a bad thing. And sometimes you invest in people and then send them out into the world. And I don't know if there's a karma piece to that or not, but I know a lot of people who really avoid spending any money on developing employees and their employees stay for long periods of time. And that to me is a terrible idea.
yeah.
That said, it's always heartbreaking when they leave when you've invested a bunch in them, whether it's, whether you're kind of even or not at that point.
I will say the other thing you can do is tie it to a grade. I don't know welding school specifically if it's like pass fail, but if they can get grades in the courses you're sending them to, say they have to get a B or better. And if you get a B or better, I'll reimburse you. If you getting a C or whatever, I may only reimburse you 50% or something like that. Just you could tie it to grades as well to incentivize them to work harder for it. All right, so tying pay to performance. We talk a lot about tying pay to performance, and we all, I think, mutually at Ranch Right agree that if you can do it in a very non-complicated way, it can make a lot of sense. And I don't know how many times I have it on the slide, but non-complicated. That's the whole point. If you're making it to where the employee has no clue how they can achieve the pay for performance incentive, you've actually done the opposite of what you're trying to do. They're like, whatever, I don't know. Okay, so the challenge here is the outcomes a lot of times in ag are outside of our control. We have markets, we have weather, we have fire, we have a lot of things that are out of our control. You have to be very critically pay attention here because it has to tie to behavior and effort and not just total results on the farm. So what we want to tie pay to. This first one, I put it in here and I cringed a little bit. The showing up reliably on time. A lot of people roll their eyes at this and like, nah, that's like part of the job. You'd be surprised if there's a small benefit to showing up on time and showing up reliably, it can be a good benefit. Animal care and standards, condition stores, equipment care. So I didn't put it in here because we're trying to keep our G rating, but the don't break shit bonus is awesome. I didn't put it in writing, and I have such a drawl that YouTube's not going to know. Don't worry. You can tie it to going back to what we just talked about. You can tie a performance to obtaining a certificate or going through a training. You can also tie it, like we've talked about previously, to a critical season. The word of the wise here, what I want to caution you on, don't tie any pay performance to cattle prices, commodities, anything that's weather dependent, vague, like good attitudes or things like that, or things that you've never told them that you're actually measuring. And certainly don't try to use pay per performance to get employees to compete. Competition can be healthy sometimes, but not when it comes to pay. So we don't want our employees competing for pay. So your rule of thumb here, if you can't measure it and they can't control it, don't pay on it. I don't know if you guys have had this. I won't spend a lot of time on it, but I do think that on some of our operations, you can get into a tenure trap, especially for those of you who've had maybe your ranch manager or your herd manager, they've been with you for a decade or more. Especially with the way wages have gone in the last 5 years specifically, you're probably finding it really hard to bring on new hires. And not have the inequity, the internal equity issue with your existing person who's been very loyal and been with you for a long time. So you've hired this person long ago. You didn't really give meaningful raises. The market's moved, and now these new hires are demanding more. And what will happen is you're kind of desperate, and so you need to get somebody into the door. And now you've got somebody who is inexperienced, making almost the same as somebody who's been with you for decades and has a ton of experience. So this is kind of how you prevent and or repair the situation if this is you. Do annual pay reviews, even if it's a small bump. We talk a lot about make sure these raises are meaningful. If you're adding 50 cents, they're probably going to see about $1,000 extra a year. So while 50-cent raise sounds a lot, the overall impact to your business and to the employee is right at $1,000 a year. Is that really impactful? So do small bumps, but make them meaningful. Reward tenure explicitly. So longevity bonuses, extra time off. If you have a schedule, let them have first pick of schedule. And then if you do an analysis and there's a gap, address it proactively. Don't wait for your employees to ask. If you're sitting on your hands waiting for the thing to come up and hoping that nobody's going to notice, that they don't. Employees are going to talk about pay. That's just life. So your script here. I want to make sure your pay reflects how long you've been here and what you bring to the table. Let's talk about that. That's kind of your opening script for that long-term employee that you want to open the door and talk about where we need to be. I said I wasn't going to go into that one, but I changed my mind.
Here we are.
Here we are.
Can't go back.
So I've got 2 pages of scripts for you guys. I'm not going to read these to you. We will give these out. There are different situations. If you want to take screenshots here, if somebody asks for a raise, what to say. If a new hire asks about job pay or a candidate asks about it. If someone says, why do I make this? Or you want to start the conversation and be proactive. Here are scripts that you can use. But one thing that you're going to notice on both of these 2 pages that I'm going to show you here in a minute, none of them involve answering immediately. If you take nothing else away, if somebody impromptu talks to you about pay, you do not have to answer immediately. Look at these scripts, familiarize yourself with them, but no, thank them for the question, get back to them. Pay is important, and you want to answer thoughtfully and with an educated answer. You don't want to go off the cuff or with your gut answer here. Again, there are times when we just can't give raises. Your employee is going to come to you and ask for a raise, and you can't do it. Here's the script. If a new employee finds out and says their pay is low, here's how we talk about it. When somebody asks, what do I need to do to get a raise? Or if employees are comparing raises, here's kind of how you address it. And again, the goal isn't to have the perfect answer on the spot. It's to slow the conversation down, show respect, thank them, gather the information, and then make a thoughtful decision. All right, my favorite thing.
Real quick, the last one in your script there, it is actually not legal to discuss other employees' compensation with someone else, right? Is that correct or is that wrong?
So me as the business owner talking to employee B about employee's A compensation?
Yes.
Right. We're not doing that.
Yeah. So even if employee A and employee B have already talked about it, you cannot, you basically can't continue in that conversation. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. All right. Our call to action. I can't wait for all 23 of you guys to get off the phone and go take action today. So pull up your current pay rates. Find out what you're paying your employees. If you're a Ranch Right employee and you use our payroll, go talk to your staff accountant. Find out what we're paying. Write down your total compensation for each role, including your non-cash benefits. I encourage you, research one benchmark. You don't have to use all 5 that I talked about today. Don't let it be overwhelming. Research the benchmark. Draft a 1-page total compensation statement for your top employee. Go see what they're making, the total value. Get them the full picture and then show it to them. Use the script that I gave you and go have that proactive conversation. And then identify one pay conversation that you've been avoiding and commit to doing it. Put it on your calendar, put it on your Google or Outlook calendar, and commit to having that pay conversation that you've been avoiding within the next 30 days. I can't wait to hear about it.
Awesome. Yeah.
All right, my final thoughts that I'm leaving you with today. Pay is a leadership decision. It's not a math or an Excel problem. You guys are business owners and leaders. That's where the pay decision lies. You can't out-compensate bad culture. Back to Derek's statement. But you can lose great people with unfair pay. Both are true at the same time. Most employees don't need to be the highest paid. We need to pay enough. When you communicate total compensation clearly, raise requests will actually go down and retention goes up. So take the time, be thoughtful about it. The conversation you've been avoiding is probably the one that's costing you more than the raise actually would. So think about that $1 an hour. If it's a full time and somebody's asking for $1 an hour, it's only costing your business $2,000 a year for round numbers, right? So is a conversation you're avoiding really worth losing somebody or having that bad blood over $2,000 a year, which is it's not a lot. Now, final thought, you have the tools. The next move is yours.
Very good, Emily.
Thank you.
Okay, a couple things. Mike, great comment here. Strong alignment with helping people develop usually equals loyalty and great results. Totally agree with that. I think as employers, if we really are willing to pour into our people, not only do we get a great relationship with that employee, but they often will tell their highly motivated friends who want to get better. And what we want is people that, we want people that want to get better. Sometimes that means they're going to leave, but they also know people that want to get better. And those are often the people we want to work with. I have said for years that I spend more time with the people I work with than I do with my family. I want to be working with people who want to be great at what they do. That's just the type of person I like to be around. Sam asked, what about a profit sharing structure? I'm a huge fan of this type of thing. You mentioned not tying compensation to cattle prices or weather, that sort of thing. Where does profit come in? Or profit sharing? Thoughts, Emily?
I like profit sharing structures.
Okay.
I think it adds a lot of value. Again, go back to my rule. It has to be easy and understandable. Don't overcomplicate it.
Yeah.
But I do like profit sharing options.
Okay. And my thought on profit sharing is I tend to, if there is some sort of incentive pay in someone's package, the more responsibility they have for generating profit, the higher percentage that would be of their, bonus or compensation. If it's a lower level person that has, very little influence on profitability, or, then to my mind, they have an incentive program that's based on something else. If it's somebody, let's say it is somebody that makes marketing decisions and makes feeding decisions and those sorts of things, then sort of they're in my mind eligible for a higher percentage of their compensation coming from profitability.
And then the one thing I will say with profit sharing, you really need to know your business, and you need to be as transparent with your employees about your business as you can be, and know, like, I think that they need to understand the big numbers. They don't need to get into the weeds of what you're making as an owner, I don't think. But I do think your targets, your overhead, some of those things that are in some of these employees' controls, your ranch manager or whatever, your foreman, you need to be transparent about where your business is at, so that they know, hey, I'm working my butt off. We're doing a good job. The business is doing good, and we can have that shared success. So know your numbers.
Yeah. Yeah. And Sam, your next question here about, ranching in an urbanizing area, your local wage competition may be outside of what ag can do. We see this exact same thing if you're an oil and gas country. As we've been building windmills, we're seeing that sort of competition. There is a lot of competition out there. To my mind, I think, researching ag wages specifically is where it's at. And I've kind of over time got the personal philosophy that if you want to work in oil and gas and make a bunch of money, you're probably not going to be very happy at the ranch. So I am looking for people that want to ranch. So I stick with, kind of ag wages. You have to be reasonable in your market, right? But you stay with people that want to do that for a living. Way too many guys, do the oil and gas thing for a while and they're like, oh, I want to go back to cowboying for a living. They do that for about 3 years and then their wife's like, hey, we're making, 1/3 of what we were making before. We're out of here. This sucks. So that's kind of a different conversation for me. You want to explain that at all, Sam? Or talk more about it?
Yeah, well, they're related questions. So, knowing I probably can't compete with the home building industry or whatever, like
Right.
I think I can get guys who come and then it's like, well, if I do a profit sharing model, then they know that if the company does well, we'll share where we can, right?
You bet. Yeah.
But I guess so. It'd be a nice ask if Ranch Right. I have no idea how to effectively do that or structure that where it is simple. And if you guys had maybe a recommended route, a template to build off of,
Yep.
might be something cool to look at. So
Yeah, very good. Emily, you'll reach out to Sam afterwards.
Mhm.
Awesome. Very good. All right. Any other thoughts or questions, Emily? That's a lot of really good info.
It was a lot.
One other quick thought I've got, and then Joe, maybe you've got something there. I have wound up with individuals who spend a lot of time talking about pay. And these tend to be employees that are always short of money. They usually have a truck payment and they've got a payment on their wife's car, and they are just always unhappy with their pay. I have had very little luck trying to help them make more money, and had much better success. Same with people that want to work in the oil field. Like, you probably better go do something else because you have too many bills to work here. The greatest thing about working on ranches is you are given free housing almost always. You're usually fed part of the time. Usually horses and dogs are either cared for, fed, or given a place. There are a whole bunch of great perks that come with working on a ranch. And if your $30,000 a year wage doesn't provide enough cash for you to buy groceries and, the other expenses that you're going to have as a ranch employee, then that probably just isn't going to work. There you have the potential as a ranch employee with no housing costs, to save an insane amount of money. And if employees don't appreciate that, we often spend time explaining it. But if that still doesn't work for them, then maybe they need to be somewhere else. And I hate to be that way, but those people that are constantly in need of more money usually are more problem than they're worth. And I know plenty of people on the internet who will absolutely slay me for saying that. So very good. Any other questions? Joe, did you have something?
Well, I was just going to ask your thoughts, if you had any, on letting employees run some of their cows on your place.
Great question. Emily?
I think it's okay. It depends on what, Joe, your goals are, and your business's goals are. I think if your goal is to grow or expand your herd it may be okay now, but then it kind of will cause some angst and awkwardness later, because once you're at that point, you're ready to grow. Do you have to find another lease place? Do you buy something? Do you ask them they need to go take their cattle somewhere else? So if you have no intention of growing and you can handle more livestock on the place that you have, I don't see a problem with it. Just know that long term it may not be a great solution.
Okay.
A couple of criteria for that. If they're going to do it, they have to run with the rest of the herd so that, stewardship is 100% aligned, right? We're not taking mineral to our cows and forgetting to take them to the ranch cows.
Mm-hmm.
I want a very clear cap So if we're a 500 head place, you can run 20, and that's the top end. We're not growing by X number every year. And things to keep in mind is if you let an employee go who has 25 or 50 cows on your place, you have additional logistical problems that you and or the employee have to deal with, which can make it harder. Now, we're also in that situation with housing. Whenever we house an employee, it just, we have to be a little more careful when we're getting rid of people that we sort of make that work. I'm all for being fair. And look, I'm going to give you notice. I'm going to ask you not to come to work tomorrow. You have a couple of weeks and you have time to get out of the house. But the hardest part is you need that house for the new person. And again, if you've got some arrangement on cows, we want to either have it pre-worked out about, you're going to buy their cows back for them, or they're going to get them out in a certain amount of time or whatever. But if it's any number that's difficult to move immediately, that just adds heartache when there's a breakup.
Yeah. I'd want to know why they want to run their own cattle. And if it's to take ownership over something and make more money, I'd say, well, let's take ownership of what's here and cut you in on the profits and rock and roll.
Much easier logistically, right? Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Cool.
I know we're over on time, but does anyone have experience of what that profit share actually looked like on a nuts and bolts side of things?
You bet. Emily, do you have any thoughts there?
No, I wish Travis were here because we had a conversation about this a couple weeks ago. Travis has some really good examples.
Yeah.
Fiona, what I can do is I can get with him and get you some good examples, and I'll get with you and Sam about it.
Awesome. Thanks.
Well, one thing that you might, Joe too, probably, you might think about what the, basic format for it. We usually come up with a formula. We take a percentage of the total profits. So for example, we might take 20% of total profits or 10 or something like that. And those are going to be distributed according to a formula to employees. I like to include longevity as a major weighting factor in that formula. So if we have just say we have $100,000 profit, I'm going to distribute $10,000 of it. Your portion of that profit fraction, if you will, is weighted on your base salary and then your longevity. And the way I do it is I just simply add the total amount of money I have paid you since you began working, because that includes both, right? If everybody's making 30 grand a year and you've been there for 20 years, then basically we add up everybody's total pay for the whole period, and then your percentage is determined by your fraction of that total. It's a fairly simple formula that just makes it very clear. If you're a brand new employee, your share of that $10,000 might be $1,000, and if you've been there for 15 years, your share of that $10,000 might be $8,500. That makes sense?
Yeah, that's helpful.
Okay. The other thing on those profit shares is, especially if you are part of a growing business, please never imply that the profit share portion will be constant. I know a number of people that have grown businesses from $1,000 profit to $1 million profit, and we're not sending everybody 5% of the profits along that whole spectrum, or 20% of the profits on that whole spectrum. We look at the dollar amount at some level to say, yeah, I'm not writing a check for $200,000. Does that make sense? Okay, so don't lock yourself into a percentage of the total profits. If you have millions of dollars in total profits, you probably also have things that are going to need that type of that level of money. I really like to look at people's base pay and scale things based on that. So always think of things as a fraction of that. So if at the end of the year I'm adding 10 or 20% to that number, that's fantastic. If I'm adding 100% to that number, that may be what you want to do, but that's a very different conversation. And it's probably a different type of position, right? If it's a sales type position or a super performance based position, that's a great idea. If it is a regular work type position where you're paid fairly well at the base, then probably not as high a percentage. Awesome. Any others? Questions, comments, thoughts?
Wouldn't you want to make sure you had positive cash flow and an increasing balance sheet too before
Yeah. Yes. That's right. And that's where that's why the profit share piece gets really delicate, because if you've got you got $350,000 in debt payments and you've got a, $325,000 profit share, be careful that we're not, shooting ourselves in the foot. Great comment, Sam. All right, awesome. Kylin's just put something in the chat here. We are hunting Google reviews. So if you would be interested in clicking on this link and filling out a Google review, that would be awesome. Emily has become more and more active on our team with our consulting and our advisory team. Please use her. She is an incredibly good resource. She is officially unemployed now by her former employer. I don't know if we're allowed to say that, but
we can.
Now she's just a stay-at-home mom. The poor gal is looking for things to do. She's got a kid napping behind her, and she's bored out of her skull. So please.
For reference, she quit her job, not got fired. So she actually is good at HR. She didn't get fired from HR.
Thank you for the clarification.
Did I say fired?
You said she's no longer employed, which could be taken multiple ways.
Yeah, fair enough. I think most people know that she is no longer employed voluntarily. But the important thing is she is a great resource. We have made her available to our customers, very liberally. And I think she's provided a tremendous amount of help. So please use her. Get on her calendar, talk to her, because she can really help us out of a lot of difficult things. HR is not the simplest thing to deal with, as most of us know. Once you get into it, it gets complicated fast. There are a lot of rules. There are a lot of social pieces to it. We really want to do this well. And interesting to me, the operations, the businesses that do this well have an absolute unfair advantage. Being recognized as an employer of choice, being recognized as a good employer, being recognized as an employer that invests in their people, that sort of thing. In being an employer who have people that do meaningful work, those are all very, very valuable in your social capital. So keep that in mind, because it really makes a big difference to the bottom line. I am not someone that thinks that employees are assets. I think that's a bit of an incorrect statement, but man, good people absolutely make good businesses. It's a huge, huge difference. So thank you, Emily. I appreciate your presentation very much today. You did a great job.
Thank you, John. That was very nice.
All right. Thank the rest of you for attending. I really appreciate it. Look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks when we do our third Thursday of the month Financial Fundamentals webinar. Cool. Be great. Have a good day.
Bye, guys.
Bye.